It was a hot day in the village market. The kind of heat that made your shirt stick to your back and your head feel heavy. The market was loud, with traders shouting prices and people haggling over the cost of vegetables and fish. But in the middle of all that noise, I felt a strange silence inside me. Something was not right. Someone was following me. I first noticed him when I stopped at a fruit store. I was reaching for some oranges when I caught sight of him out of the corner of my eye. He wasn't looking at the fruits or talking to anyone. He was watching me. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but as I moved to another store, he moved too. Always keeping just enough distance to make it seem like a coincidence. By the time I reached the spice vendor, I was sure he was following me. My heart started beating faster. Who was this man? What did he want? I tried to think of reasons why someone might be watching me, but none of them made sense. I wasn't rich. I wasn't famous. I was just keen, trying to get through the week without spending too much money. I decided to test him. I made an abrupt turn and walked toward the fish market, where the smell of dried fish was so strong it made my nose twitch. He followed. I turned again, this time heading to a small corner where they sold second-hand clothes. He followed. My palms were sweaty now, and I clutched the small bundle of naira notes in my pocket even tighter. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I spun around and faced him. "Why are you following me?" I said, louder than I intended. Heads turned, and people nearby paused to look at us. The man didn't seem bothered. He smiled, a calm smile that made me feel more uneasy. "You don't know me," he said, his voice steady, "but I know something about you." I frowned, confused and a little angry. "What do you mean? Who are you?" He stepped closer, but not too close. "You're running out of money," he said simply. I blinked. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Was it that obvious? I had been careful not to let my worries show. Between paying my younger siblings' school fees, fixing the leaking roof at my father's house, and trying to save for emergencies, my earnings from the data analysis jobs I did were stretched thin. But how could he know? "What do you want?" I asked, my voice cautious now. He looked at me for a moment, as if deciding something. Then he pointed toward a small tea shop at the edge of the market. "Come," he said. "Let me show you something." I hesitated. Everything in me said I shouldn't trust a stranger, especially one who had been following me. But there was something about him, his calmness, his steady gaze, that made it hard to walk away. Against my better judgment, I followed him. The tea shop was small and quiet, a welcome change from the noise of the market. He chose a table in the corner, away from the other customers, and ordered 2 cups of tea. When the tea arrived, he didn't touch his. Instead, he leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. "Tell me," he began, "what will you do if, tomorrow, you don't make a single naira?" The question hit me like a stone. I opened my mouth to respond but found that I had no answer. The thought of not making money hadn't crossed my mind because I was always hustling. I was always looking for the next job, the next opportunity. "I don't know," I admitted finally. He nodded, as if he had expected that. "You're not alone," he said. "Most people don't think about it until it's too late. They assume that as long as they work hard, the money will keep coming. But hard work isn't always enough." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He reached into his bag and pulled out a small notebook. Flipping it open, he pointed to a page filled with scribbled notes and numbers. "This is what I mean," he said, tapping the page. "People work hard, but they spend everything they earn. They don't prepare for the days when work slows down, or when life throws something unexpected at them. They live day to day, paycheck to paycheck." I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. His words were hitting too close to home. I thought about how I always felt like I was chasing money, never able to rest, never able to plan beyond the next week or month. "So what should I do?" I asked. He smiled, a little sadly. "Come back tomorrow," he said. Same time, same place. I'll tell you what I've learned. Before I could protest, he stood up, leaving a few naira notes on the table to pay for the tea. Then he disappeared into the crowd, leaving me sitting there with a half-empty cup of tea and a head full of questions. As I walked home that evening, his words kept echoing in my mind. What will you do if, tomorrow, you don't make a single naira? It was a question I couldn't ignore, and for the first time, I felt a knot of fear in my stomach. What if he was right? What if I wasn't as prepared as I thought? I didn't know who the stranger was or why he had decided to talk to me, but one thing was clear: I needed to hear what he had to say. I decided I would go back the next day, no matter what. The next day, I returned to the tea shop, curious and uneasy. The stranger was already there, waiting with a small bundle on the table in front of him. He smiled when he saw me, gesturing for me to sit. I see you couldn't stop thinking about the question, he said. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. He unwrapped the bundle, revealing 3 small calabashes, each one intricately carved. He placed them in a line on the table. This, he said, tapping the first one, represent your daily expenses, food, transport, bills. This one, he tapped the second, is for emergencies, things you don't see coming, like sickness or a broken roof. Finally, he pointed to the third calabash. And this one is for your future, your freedom. I stared at the calabashes, unsure where he was going with this. What does freedom have to do with money? I asked. Everything, he said simply. Tell me, how do you spend your money? I hesitated. Well, I pay for what I need now, food, rent. Sometimes I save a little, but not much. He nodded. That's the first calabash, your daily expenses. But what about the other 2? How much do you put in them? I shrugged. Not enough, I guess. He leaned back, folding his arms. The problem is, you're living only for today. You're filling the first calabash, maybe even the second, but the third one, the one that matters most, is empty. I frowned, trying to understand. What happens if I don't feel it? The stranger's expression turned serious. Then you'll always depend on others. You'll always chase the next naira, never able to rest, never truly free. His words struck a nerve. I thought about my parents, who worked hard all their lives but never had enough to stop. I thought about the sleepless nights I spent worrying about unexpected expenses. So how do I feel the third one? I asked. Start small, he said. Set something aside every time you earn, even if it's just a little. Put it into something that grows, an investment, a skill, anything that will keep giving back. Over time, you'll build something powerful. That's what we call financial independence. It's not about being rich, it's about not being tied down. It's about freedom. I stared at the third calabash, imagining it full. For the first time, the idea of financial independence felt real to me. It wasn't about having millions or living in luxury, it was about having the freedom to make choices without fear. The stranger continued, when you fill this third calabash, you gain control. You can decide how to spend your time, what projects to take on, and even when to rest. But it requires discipline. Every naira you earn must be split between these 3 calabashes. If you ignore one, the others won't be enough. I nodded, slowly beginning to understand. But what if I don't earn much? How can I save when I barely make enough for the first calabash? He smiled, his calm demeanor reassuring. That's where creativity and patience come in. Look for ways to reduce unnecessary expenses. Learn skills that increase your earning power. It's not about how much you earn, it's about what you do with what you have. The key is consistency. I sat back, taking it all in. His words felt both simple and profound. I thought about my current habits and how much money slipped through my fingers on things I didn't really need. I realized that building financial independence wasn't just a dream, it was a plan, one I could start working on immediately. The stranger stood up, gathering the calabashes into his bundle. I've told you what you need to know, he said. The rest is up to you. I wanted to thank him, but before I could find the right words, he had already slipped out of the tea shop and disappeared into the market crowd. As I walked home that evening, the image of the 3 calabashes stayed with me. I could see them clearly in my mind, one for today, one for emergencies, and one for the future. For the first time, I felt a sense of control, a way forward. That night, I sat down with a pen and paper and made a plan. I wrote down my expenses, identified what I could cut back on, and set a small goal for saving and investing. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I realized that financial independence wasn't something far away or impossible, it was something I could build, step by step. Looking back now, that encounter in the market was a turning point in my life. The stranger's words changed how I saw money and freedom. It wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about creating a life where I could thrive. And that journey began with 3 simple calabashes and a promise to myself to feel the one that mattered most.